started smelling pancakes, and I don't eat the same way since I left. I think I lost a couple of pounds. I think that's the hardest thing to do is to leave Maria behind after the summer. I appreciated Tali and Celia also, but Maria cooks well. So I was called to ask to address you guys about the Selihot, and I'll share with you a few ideas that are significant to me. Hopefully they'll have some meaning to you. And many of them are just based on experiences that I've had over the years, some of them with you, some of them with your parents. And it's a young crowd tonight. Interesting. Okay, and it's as every year I get older, I look at the world a little bit differently because of the stage of life that I wound up coming into. So the topic tonight, I think about was Carpe Diem, right? It was about seizing the moment, trying to make the best out of time. So normally on Shabbatot, the Shabbat before Rosh Chodesh is always a Shabbat that we bench Rosh Chodesh or do Birkat HaChodesh. And that's because we want to let everyone know that, listen, the new month is coming, and we've got to prepare for it. However, today we didn't do that. Today is the only Shabbat before Rosh Chodesh that we don't do Birkat HaChodesh because it's Rosh Hashanah. And the assumption is that everybody knows that Rosh Hashanah is coming, and therefore there's no reason to bother going and letting everybody know because everybody's aware when the new year begins, and therefore this Rosh Chodesh is not necessary. So I want to just share with you an idea about Rosh Chodesh that I learned from Rabbi Shlomo Riskin. A word about who he is. Steve Riskin, Rabbi Shlomo Riskin, was a guy, I think it was in the probably 70s. He was in YU, and he went to the Rav of Yosef Dovelevich Soloveitchik. He went to his Rabbi, and he said, listen, there's this conservative shul in the city, and I think it has potential, and I want to, I think if I can just get in there, I can accomplish a lot. And the Rav said, yeah, but it's a conservative shul, there's no mechitza. So after talking for a while, the Rav, in a very unusual decision, said to him, you can go in there, but if you don't have a mechitza in 2 years, you have to leave. 2 years later, there was a mechitza. 5 years later, he said to the community, we're a very Zionistic community, he said, we don't belong in this country, we have to go to Israel. And I'm leaving in 5 years. He really said that. 5 years later, he and 50 families left Lincoln Square Synagogue and founded Efrat. So Rabbi Steve Riskin is really, to me, is a legend. People don't realize it as much, but he's a guy that many of us knew, did just unbelievable things, and he's very big in the political scene. So anyways, I was reading something, he writes a lot of interesting stuff on the Parshat HaShavua, etc., but he wrote something on Haggadah, and much of what I will say that will make sense will be coming from him in the introduction to the Haggadah. And in the Haggadah, he opens up by asking this question, what is everybody freaking out about Chametz for? Like, what is this mad rush and insanity about getting rid of every last bit of chametz? So obviously, the Torah tells us, that we have to get rid of all the chametz. But he's asking why? And so what is so terrible about it symbolically? So, to be able to understand that, typically speaking, the negative association with chametz has to do with hubris, being arrogant. As the dough rises, we become full of ourselves and very arrogant, and therefore want to get rid of all of that at Pesach time. He, however, starts to go back to the origin of it, and to do that, he goes back to the first mitzvah given in the Torah. The first mitzvah given in the Torah to the Jewish people as a whole, not Puru Urvu and Sefer Bereshit, but rather the first mitzvah given to Am Yisrael is a Chodesh Zelachem Rosh Chodeshim, is the mitzvah of Rosh Chodesh. So the issue is, like, of all the mitzvah to give to us, why Rosh Chodesh? You imagine Brit Milah, Kashrut, Yom Kippur, you wouldn't be thinking about Rosh Chodesh. Most people don't even give it any kind of significance at all. It's not a holiday. So we have to understand what Rosh Chodesh was about and what used to happen. First of all, back in the day, we didn't have a calendar like we have it today. We used to establish the new moon based on Edut. Witnesses would come and see the new moon. They would come and testify. Now we knew that the new moon was going to wind up being 29 or 30 days. We weren't quite sure when it would happen. So then they would come to Yerushalayim. Even on Shabbat they would travel because it was so significant. And they would testify in court that they had seen the new moon. And if they made a mistake, and the Beit Din would say, Mikudash, the new moon was sanctified, then that became halachic reality. Truly, even if they were wrong, once that decision was made and ratified by the Beit Din, that became reality. And therefore they were given that kind of control, and they would establish when the new moon would be. This idea he brings out, and it's not just Rabbi Riskin that speaks about it, but he connects it to here very, very poignantly, was HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Kaviyachol, reaching out of the heavens to man and giving him control over the most precious commodity that we have, and that is time. That a person is invited to be godlike in his involvement in time. HaKadosh Baruch Hu does this in many different ways. Like, we're able to do a lot of things. Hashem allows us to be involved in technology, whether that's in farming or computers or minerals that we mine, and procreation, of course. So we're able to be godlike in that way. But the idea of control over time, that's a really significant one, because that's what really makes you a totally independent being, that you get to decide what to do at any given minute. In fact, the holiest name of God that we have access to today, there are others we don't have access to, but the holiest one that we have, God's name that we never ever pronounce, ever, not during Kriyat Torah, not during learning Torah, not during Tefillah, is the Shem Havaya, the name of God's existence, which is Yud Kei Vav Kei. We never pronounce that one. What makes it so holy? And all the names of God have their own significance. Shin Daled Yud and Aleph Lamed, right? Aleph Lamed is God's power, and Aleph Daled Yud is HaKadosh Baruch Hu being the owner of the master of the world, and Elohim refers to Midat Diem, and Shin Daled Yud refers to HaKadosh Baruch Hu saying, die. Everything should stay where it's supposed to be, the cosmos and the water and the land. Every name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu has its own significance. And the name of Havaya, so that name is something which is difficult to fathom for us, because we experience time in a linear fashion. We have lived through and maybe read about the past. We might even see a video of it. We live in the present in our very, very limited locus of where we're standing. And we can only conjecture about the future. But to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, past, present, and future are all happening simultaneously. That's something which we really can't fully fathom. That's what makes him God. He's beyond the concept of time. He was here before time began. So therefore, this idea of timelessness, of creation of time, of involvement in time, is HaKadosh Baruch Hu allowing man to become a shutaf in Briat Olam, in the creativity of the world. So this mitzvah of Kiddush HaChodesh is HaKadosh Baruch Hu telling the Jewish people, I want you to be involved in time. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was saying that the first mitzvah that I'm giving you is that if you want to be a Jew, get a watch, get a calendar, get a Palm Pilot, whatever you need to keep track of time, you're going to need that. And the obvious is that there are so many mitzvot that are connected to time. Shabbat, Yom Tov, so many mitzvot you have to do by a specific time of day, and also there are so many mitzvot to do in general that if you don't get control of your time, you're not going to get them all done. There's just so many things to do as a Jew. It's such a different perspective on the world than many other religions. I think that being Jewish is an action-oriented religion, and we'll come back to that idea later on, but I mean, to be an active member of most religions doesn't require that much of your time. But for a Jew, it's involved constantly. So many decisions, so many halakhic implications in every single part of your life. So the time issue is a critical one. And this is HaKadosh Baruch Hu making the statement to us. So he then tells us that, when it comes to Pesach, which remember, and we're focusing on Pesach now is because Rosh Hashanah is coming tomorrow, but Rosh Hashanah, the Torah, is actually Nisan. Because this is when Adam was created, not the world, but Adam was created on the sixth day. And that's the beginning of time for us here. But the beginning of time in terms of the Torah is Nisan, because we became a nation that time. We were created as a people. And therefore, that Rosh Hashanah is also significant. The matzah, the message behind that, he claims, is this message of time. So it's a long-standing common thing that most teachers will tell their students, that chametz and matzah really are almost the same, right? Chametz and matzah each are made with flour and water. With one of them, I let it rise, I just let it sit. And with the other one, I bake it off. If I bake it off for 18 minutes, I have matzah. If I let it sit for more than 18 minutes, I have chametz. The words chametz and matzah are the same. Each has a mem, each has a tzadik. One has a chet and one has a hey. The difference between a hay and a chayt is that little tiny thing that connects the leg to the roof. It's like a half an inch. And he says that drop of vein represents a moment in time. Because the difference between chametz and matzah is a split second. And therefore the message is, what are you doing with your time? A Jew is supposed to be a matzah kind of a person. Are we a matzah Jew or are we a chametz Jew? So a matzah Jew views the world as Carpe Diem. I have very little time, I have so much to accomplish, I have to go out and seize the moment. And a chametz Jew is very, very relaxed and very very calm and takes his time for everything else. The word chametz also is significant. You see that in other parts of the language. For example, mlafafon chamutz is a pickle, right? Which is a cucumber that just sits day after day after day in brine. And it becomes chametz, it becomes a pickle. Chometz is vinegar, Because wine, after time, when it sits, becomes chometz. It just sits and sits and sits. The nature of chametz is sitting and waiting. So when Chazal tell us our attitude towards mitzvot, it should be zrizim makdimin lemitzvot. Rush to do them. However, the opposite, if someone doesn't do that, they tell us, mitzvah hava aliyatcha al tachmitzeno. Don't let it go stale. Don't let it become chametz. Because chametz represents letting things just sit and go. The opposite of Carpe Diem. Therefore, the message of matzah and Pesach is to let us know that, listen, your time is your own now. It's time for you to go out there and take charge of your life. Why now in Pesach time, at that time of year? Because when you're a slave, so who cares what you're doing with your time? It's not your time. You work for somebody else. You're not in control of your time. You do what you're told. But once your time is your own, so then you have to make decisions. Then it's up to you what you're going to do. The best way to show your appreciation of being free is to make the most of your time. I know when I deal with my students, let's say a kid raises his hands, and as some of you used to do, right? And you'll be sitting there, and you have to go to the bathroom in school. So a kid goes to the bathroom. The world just slows down. The whole world slows down. You walk out of the close the door of the classroom. Right? There's no doors in SAR. But let's say a normal school, there's a door, and you have to go outside. And all of a sudden, everything is fascinating. Every single picture on the wall has to be stared at. Oh, that's my brother. He graduated in 2007. Yeah. And we're waving at everybody. Everything that's going on, I have to take a look at. I'm counting the tiles. Anything, because where am I going? I'm going back to class. So who wants to do that? So all of a sudden, things are just like slowing down. Because I'm not on my time now. I'm on school time. Then 4:30 comes around, and when that bell rings, the whole building is shaking like crazy. I'm not a loser. I have places to go, people to see, things to do. I have places to go. I'm in a hurry right now. Now all of a sudden I'm busy. Now I have to run, I have to go, I have practice, I have a play date, whatever I have going on, but I can't be here, and there's like a tremendous tumult. So once you're a free person, so all of a sudden time becomes valuable, right? When I'm in jail, aka school, so I'm locked up, and time is very, very slow. Where am I going? But when I'm free and I'm on my own, all of a sudden now I have a life and I have things to do. So now I have to move. All right. So the Jewish people finally becomes free, and Hashem says, okay, I'm giving you your time. What are you going to do with it? We finally have the opportunity to go there. And we see this even from the move from Pesach. What happens on Pesach? I will transition right into the Omer, Sfirat HaOmer. Another countdown. Another series of days where time is essence, because I'm moving towards Matan Torah. And the key to the Omer is not counting the days. It's making the days count. It's what are you going to do with those days? You just got out of Egypt, and now you're on your own. And what are you going to do with it? A lot of the people here, I see now, face a lot of this stuff, right? You get out of high school, make decisions. It's like get out of college. Oh God, now what? Right? Now it's reality. Now I have to get a job, I have to look at life, am I dating, am I not dating, big decisions, family business, going something else. It's many of my students will want to talk to me about that, because all of a sudden now that I'm free, a lot of decisions have to be made. But that's the great thing about being free. It's also the challenge of being free, is having that ability to make these decisions and deciding what's really important in your life. Because we decide what's important in our lives based upon how much time we spend on them. Something to think about in terms of our family, our children, and our work, and how much time we spend on each one of those things. What we spend our time on is, whether we like it or not, making a decision about what's really significant in our lives. Okay. The time is a weird thing. It means different things to different people as they get older. It's like I remember when I was running around like a maniac, making a living, doing things that I really like to do, but it was very, very difficult. So I remember once I was having a conversation with one of my youngest sons. I was working a lot in North Shore, in Great Neck Synagogue, and camp, whatever, and tutoring. And Sundays I would take my kids out all the time. So Thursday night I was speaking to Moshe, my youngest son, who right now actually is in Israel. And he said to me, what are we doing this weekend? So I said, what would you like to do? Because I want to go to Fun Zone. Fun Zone, put it on the S. I don't know if it's still around anymore. Fun Zone, Adventureland. I think Adventureland. Yeah, Adventureland. So I sent the kids there. Hope was there. So, right. So So he said, fun, and I said, okay, fine, let's go. So he said, when are we going to go? I said, we'll go Sunday. So he was like, I think it was 3. So he said to me, tomorrow? I was like, no, Sunday. So he said, we're not going to go? I said, no, we're going to go. We're just going to go Sunday. But he's 3 years old, so he couldn't wrap his head around Sunday. He's like, how many minutes is that? I said, Moshe, it's not minutes. And I was thinking, wow, Chaim and Zahab were smart. Maybe I got one kid there. So he said, how many minutes? I said, it's not minutes, Moshe. It's like, it's Thursday night now, tomorrow's Friday, then Shabbos, and then it's going to be Sunday. He's like, we're not going to go? He just thought I was yanking his chain. Like, I'm just trying to make up an excuse. It was like, to him, it was like my saying maybe. And maybe means no in dad language. But they don't really want to say no, so they say maybe. So he thought I was doing it. I said, no, I promised you we're going to go. He just couldn't deal with it. Because tomorrow, he could wrap his head around because he could make tomorrow happen. He's in total control of tomorrow. Because he could shut his eyes, he'd go to sleep, he'd open them up, it would be tomorrow. So he could kind of force tomorrow to happen by going to bed. But he could not speed up Sunday. That was just out of reach for him. And Rafi, who's a few years older, he would, he was, I guess, 5th, 6th grade, so he would think about like weeks. He could deal with weeks. Next week I have a test. Next week I have a trip. And Zahava was in, say, middle school, maybe 8th grade and 9th grade, and she was thinking about months. Next month there's a Shabbaton. Next month I'm having also a special event, a trip, etc. I'm going to have I can go for my permit in another month or two. And Chaim, let's say, was in college, would think about semesters. First semester, second semester, right? First semester bio, second semester bio. And then when you go to graduate school, everything moves by the years. Like I'm a first-year law student, I'm a second-year medical student, I'm a second-year resident. Everything is by the year. The years go by at a clip. Then you leave school entirely, and then life just flies by. But completely changes everything. And all you're ever saying is like right in front, oh my God, I can't believe it's Rosh Hashanah again. Right? I can't believe it's Rosh Hashanah. It's actually a month late. What do you mean you can't believe it? It's supposed to be the beginning of September. This is the latest that ever shows up, right? It's later now than it ever is before. Everyone's saying, I can't believe Rosh Hashanah is here. We're a month behind now. But we're still saying, I can't believe it's going to be here. And the truth is, you're going to blink, it's going to snow. Then you're going to blink again, and you're going to be making plans for Pesach. You're going to blink again, and you're going to be sending your kids to MJC, 516-640-0077. It's a little cheap plug. So, the year goes by very, 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 very quickly. And your life changes. And before you know it, you change. We always view ourselves as 17, 18 years old. We're all cool all the time. We don't view ourselves as becoming that person who's not. And nobody remembers when it tends to happen that, when you run, you start running instead of straight, kind of from side to side. Your belt gets higher 1 inch every year as you get older. And your kids point it out to you, and everything starts to annoy you. Noise more than anything else. And these changes happen. Like, when did this happen? I used to be a fun person, and your kids look at you, no matter how cool you think you are, they point out that you're not. Sahaba told me I had to go ahead and she was like trying to tell me nice things. You have to shave right over here. You have a unibrow. I was like, what? So she was, no, it's cool. Most of my friends, their fathers don't have any hair at all. It's okay, Abba. You just have too much of it in the wrong places. We'll get rid of it. You'll be okay. So we change, and time goes by very, very quickly. And then, when you're dealing with the community and your parents, like some of your parents are, and some of you now are entering into that, time becomes very, very much a commodity. We see this because there's so many demands on our time. When you're a kid, time's a burden. There's just so much, you don't know what to do with it. You got to find things to kill time. The movie starts at 8:30, and I'm getting to town at 7 o'clock. What am I going to do to kill an hour and a half? How much pizza can I eat? So I'll get pizza and ice cream. Then I'll go to that store with the funny games in it, whatever, and then I'm going to walk around a little bit, and I'll meet my friend, I'll kill some time, and then I'll come back to the movie. So there's so much time, you don't know what to do. Then you get older, and you can't breathe. I don't have time to make a phone call. Because you come home at night, I'd say your average dad probably is at work a minimum between travel time and working probably 13 hours a day he's out of the house, right? People leaving the house 8 o'clock, right? 9 o'clock, not coming back till 6, 7. No one's making a living 9 to 5 anymore. It doesn't happen. So then they get back home, and there's mail, and every one of those is a bill, right? No one's writing a letter anymore. No one writes letters. No one's handwritten anything, unless it's like a special font, which is handwriting font to make you think it's personal, but it's not. It's another way to ask for money, right? Every single letter is asking for money. And either it could be local, it could be your mortgage, or it could be the Knesset, it could be Moshe Academy, it could be Chabad, it could be every organization in Israel that somehow got your name on their list, but everybody's asking for money. So you separate your piles, etc. And then everybody in your family comes over to you asking for money also. So first, your daughter comes and says, I need like $400 for a Shabbaton for Moshe Hebrew Academy. What do you mean? We just started school. Yeah, there's a retreat. Abba, it's a whole big thing. So I don't understand. When are you going? Well, we're going from Thursday to over the weekend. I don't understand. You're not going to school Thursday. I just paid $26,000 for you not to go to school, and now I have to pay $400 more for you not to be. I don't understand. How could it possibly be? I don't follow. And then your wife comes in and tells you that, listen, we have a wedding this weekend. We have to give a gift, right? Why do I have to pay for their wedding? I don't understand. Like, why he has a big wedding? Why do I have to pay for it? I don't understand that. Tell them we can't go. Tell them we're not feeling well. I don't have to go. It's not that big a deal. Make up an excuse. I don't want to. We just went to. I can't go. I can't go to 30 weddings a year. It becomes like a line item in your budget, your annual budget. It's going to bar mitzvahs and weddings. It's like a $15,000 a year deal. It's like another tuition. Let's not be so social. It's not such a big deal. And then then your mother calls you. This is your grandmother calls your father and says, listen, your brother's having a hard time at work and he could use some of your connection to help get him. I'm trying. But you know what he's like. I can't. And then you have a sister who's not married yet. That's also an issue. That's your issue also now. And then your wife comes in and says to you that your son, Mrs. Dicker called, we have to get him tested because he bit a kid again. I don't know what to do. Maybe pack him a better lunch. I am trying. I give him the ISIS cream. I don't know this. I don't know what it is. He keeps biting kids. Okay, fine. Listen. He needs to get tested. Maybe Mrs. Dicker needs to get tested. Why does every kid have to get tested? More than half of the kids in our class have been tested. Maybe the other half are normal, and these are whatever. So all this is at night is one thing after the other. And then all of a sudden, Johnny, Nazi call you. I want you to be on a certain committee to help me form the camp, or the basketball league, or whatever renovation has to happen. And I came back also after camp. I came back like for 2 weeks later, and there was like a dust bowl. Looked like 9/11 downstairs. I walked into the building. You could barely breathe. Everyone's wearing like this. It was like white. Did you see the video? It was like white dust everywhere. There's something always happening, Baruch Hashem, in the community. But all those things take money, take a lot of time. So there's so many demands on your time. And then before you know it, your father's just sitting in this like lump at this. He's just been trying to eat dinner the whole night. It's stale. He's on and off the phone, and then he just falls asleep. You have to go wake him up. That nodding. That thing your father does until he finally goes upstairs to bed. He gets up, does the same thing all over again. So the demands on our time become greater and greater and greater, and therefore the decision on what to do with that time becomes a much, much bigger decision. But it really is a godly thing if you take it seriously, if you pay attention to it. And that's what we need to think about, I think, as we're coming into the new year, about that significance of time. So, Carpe Diem is an important thing, and Chazal want to make a sensitive to that. For example, when it comes to learning Torah, Chazal tell us you should be koveh itim l'Torah. When you ask about a guy, let's say you're dating a guy, you want to know if he learns, is he koveh itim is the right question. It's not a matter of how much time a person spends learning. Don't get me wrong. There's a significance, because you can learn more and more time and less time. But are you koveh itim? Is learning a part of your life? Is studying? Is being involved in your religion, in being involved in your connection with Kadosh Baruch Hu, part of your every day, part of your every week routine? Or is it kavua? People that don't make things koveh doesn't happen. It's like people who work out occasionally. That means they don't work out. Those are the people who have all their clothing on that bicycle in their room. That extra set of, you hang up your shirt and your jacket on the arm of the treadmill that you bought because you thought that as you signed the check for $1,100 to buy a fancy bike, that somehow you would lose weight with the amount of calories you spent writing the check. But once that's over, it's over. That's how all the gyms make money, by the way. Everybody signs up in January. That's the Goyish New Year. Everybody has these resolutions. They're going to lose by 15, 20 pounds. And you ever think, how do they have so many members? I asked recently, I was in LA Fitness. They built a new one by my house. I said, how many members? They said, we only have 1,000, but the one on Stewart Avenue, they have 8,000. So I said, 8,000 members? How's that possible? It's a big place, but 8,000, because but no one goes. Only like 5 to 10% of people actually go. They all go for like 3-4 times, then they stop coming. That's how they make their money. So if you're not koveh itim, to really, really spend time on working out, or learning Torah, or with your children, then that's not going to be a real part of your life that's significant. And if we have to think about making that kind of commitment as we go forward into the new year, we should be thinking about what we're going to do as far as that goes. When I was in Israel, one of my Rabbeim, the one who probably the greatest impact on me, his name was Rabbi Polyakov. Not to be confused with Rabbi Polyakov, who I'm good friends with from Great Next Synagogue. His name was Rabbi Polyakov. Really adorable little guy, genius, brilliant. And I was in Israel and just awestruck. I was there for a couple of years. And he was my Rebbe, so I would follow him around. I was learning with him, like 3 blot a day, this accelerated learning program, etc. And we were always seeking out his advice. There was a line of guys to get advice from him. So as I'm waiting, I saw that he dropped something out of his papers from his pocket, and I bent down to pick it up. And it was a yellow Post-it, and on it said, "Talk to wife." I handed it back to him, and then I speak to him. So after he left, I would walk him out to the bus. It would frequently happen. I would walk out of the yeshiva, and I'd walk with him to the bus stop, and I would wind up in the middle of Jerusalem somewhere, but he had to go to his kollel, and I would have to find my way back to yeshiva afterwards. But I said to him, "Rabbi, forgive me for asking this. I didn't really plan on talking about this, but it's been on my head. I can't get it out of my head. I did not mean to look into your personal things at all, but I saw that you dropped a piece of paper." He said, "Yeah, thank you. So you picked it up today during Shir." I said, "I know, but it said talk to wife on it. What does that mean?" He said, "Shmuel, it means I have to talk to my wife. It's a big deal." So I said, "You have to write yourself a note to talk to your wife. Don't you live at home with her?" He said, "I do." I said, "Don't you talk to her all the time?" He said, "Not really." So I said, "I don't." So he said, "Yeah, I know you understand. You're 17. I talk to my wife all the time about nonsense, about bills and things that we have to go, things we have to do, about taking care of stuff. But my wife is clearly going through a hard time right now, and she needs more of my time. And she needs my time and time for me alone, without my students or my kids or anything else distracting us. I need to actually carve out some time to spend with her so that she knows I'm there for her." Do you understand what I mean? And I nodded yes. I didn't. I nodded yes because I was supposed to nod yes, but I was 17. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't have a wife. I didn't know what that meant. I thought if you're in the same room together, you're spending time with them. That's what it means. You're spending time, you're there. But as we know now, you could be in the room with somebody and they're just not present. They're not with you. Certainly not to have a phone, right? So he would keep track of things he had to do, and that's probably why for many, many years I would keep little notes, probably also things I had to take care of all the time. But that idea of spending quality time, undistracted time, was something that would take me many, many years to learn to appreciate. And that now, as I speak to, older students or parents, it's something I think to really focus on. Okay. The Vilna Gaon, 1700s, out of control genius, off the charts, would have been a Tana in the times of the Mishnah. By all accounting, one of the greatest minds in the history of our people since the Talmudic era. He was seen, this guy was learning Gemara at 3. He wrote a book on mathematics in the bathroom. It means you now let's learn Torah in the bathroom. So to distract himself from learning, when your mind is racing, he would sit and do mathematical problems whenever he went to the bathroom, and eventually wound up creating a book on geometry. So he was seen during Rosh Hashanah crying his eyes out. And in his hands, one of the students noticed a piece of paper. And very curious to learn from his Rebbe, so he peeked and he went to see, and there were dates in lines. And he asked his Rebbe, I don't help me understand. So he said, "Well, these are the days on which I wasted these minutes that I could have been learning that I wasn't." And the student was dumbfounded. The Vilna Gaon, V'hagita bo yomam v'layla was in every minute, the air that you breathe was Torah, and every minute was an opportunity for learning. And there were times he got distracted by things that were significant, like taking care of his family, making a living, etc. But there were times that he just simply didn't go back to learning, and for that he would cry in Rosh Hashanah for the missed opportunity of those moments, because for him, every minute really, really counted. So when he was on the shul Rosh Hashanah, he was bawling over them. It's an amazing thing to be able to learn from your Rebbeim, not only from what you hear in Shir, but also from what you see through their behaviors. My friends told me that he learned from one of his Rebbeim, Benny Eisner, was Rebbe. That was, when I was there, 83 through 85, it was BMT, now it's called Torah Shraga, right, the YU campus. So Rav Benny always had a lot of guests over. He invited many students over, he invited people in shul over all the time. So my friend came and told me, he goes, I just learned something tremendous about Rabbi. So I said, what happened? He goes, well, I noticed whenever I go to Rabbi's house, I'm invited, and we go to shul, he invites a lot of other people, but he never walks home with us. We're always walking home, and we're always like, where's Rabbi? And he's not around. He'd always be at the meal, but he would never be there. So one day, I stalked him. One Shabbat, I went to shul, and then, like right before Musaf, I stood by the door, and as we finished Mon Esrei, I watched the Rabbi bolted. So he ran out of the house, and I followed him. And I made sure he didn't see me. I was like, that's a little weird, right? So he said, yeah, I know, but I want to find out what was going on. So he follows Rabbi home, and Rabbi goes into his house, and he's standing outside the house looking through the window. And Rabbi is at the table, moving everything around. And then when everybody comes home, they all come inside, and they all sit down. And then he realized when all the guests would come in, both the invited ones and the guests that were not invited until Shabbat morning, that his wife had no way of knowing they were coming, there were always the right number of settings at the table. Because he would run home in advance and reset the table so that no one would have to feel awkward. Because if you would come home and they had to shift everything around for those 3 people, that would be a really awkward feeling. So that's what Rabbi would do, but he would never tell anybody about it. But my friend, this was his Rabbi, so he would learn from him. That's what it means, that when it comes to your Rebbe, you should cling to the dust of their feet. I mean, you should literally follow them to see what they do and how they behave. Not just listen to what they say in the shiur, but rather look at what they do and look at how they live. And you learn so much more from that as well. And sometimes it makes an even deeper impression. So, we need to look for opportunities this year. The year of mitzvot. I asked my students, like, what kind of symbolic foods do we have? And so, apple and honey, pomegranate. I said, why do we have a pomegranate? And the kid said to me, because, there's 613 seeds in pomegranate, like the mitzvot. And I was like, that's not true. They looked at me like there's no God. Like Judaism is fake. So I said, let's begin. Okay, Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, 613 seeds in a pomegranate, it's just not there. Okay, go home and count it. I said, did you ever count it? He's like, yeah. And I said, did you find 730? He goes, no, I kept losing track in the 500s, and my hands were all red, and my mom was getting upset. I got my shirt dirty, so I kept stopping. But I was sure that there was, because my Rabbi in first grade told me that there was. I was like, hey, he lied. Sorry, that's just not true. So these and all other symbolisms, which are significant, I hope that we're, reasonable enough to understand that these are not meant as factual things, and having an apple dipped in honey will not ensure that you will have a sweet year. But what it does mean is it puts me in the right frame of mind. When I have a pomegranate and I make the brachot, that I realize that I want this year to be as full of mitzvot as this pomegranate is bursting with seeds, and it really is. There's no room in there. It's so tight and it's packed. That's how full my life should be with mitzvot. With that kind of an attitude, then you'll have a better year and a more productive year. Not because there are more or less seeds in the particular pomegranate. So we should keep that in terms of the head of the fish and the tail, etc. Not getting too crazy. And if it grosses you out to have it at the table, don't have it at the table, right? Someone said I have the head of a lamb at the table. I don't know. I can't imagine that. What the ASPCA would say about that either. So the mitzvot, as we come to take a look at them and become more involved in them, I think we need to have a broader perspective, in terms of what we expect out of them and what their purpose is. So, we're an action-oriented religion. And as I said before, that makes us distinct compared to other religions in the world. To be, I really shouldn't say, I guess, but to be a religious Christian or Catholic, I don't know how much is involved in the day-to-day, but to be an Orthodox Jew, it takes a lot. And that's because the Jews are behaviorist by nature. They're not psychoanalytic. That is to say that we believe that a person's behavior will affect his essence, his nature. The Sefer HaChinuch, he writes the following, that in describing all the mitzvot that we have, why there are so many mitzvot, so many action-oriented mitzvot, Adam nif'al kefi pu'ulotav, that a person is habituated through the actions that he does, the things that you do. So, we do not do what we do because of who we are. We are who we are because of what we do. If there's anything that you're going to take away from tonight, it should be this, right? We do not do what we do because of who we are. We are who we are because of what we do. When you do chata'im, when a person does a sin, it by definition makes you less. You are more distant from God. And when you do mitzvot, you reconnect with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, and you are a better person. Whether you understand it at that moment or not, but you are increasing your humanity. You increasing your connection to Kadosh Baruch Hu. If a person does acts of kindness, then he becomes a kind person. If he goes out of his way to do things that show compassion, he will become a compassionate person, whether he thinks it's happening or not. And that's why we do these perfunctory things like teaching our kids, how to respond. We do it ourselves also. We tell our kids, if you hand your kid something, it's like pushing a button. He goes, "Thank you." Right? He doesn't mean it. He just knows that every time somebody gives me something, I better say thank you, or my mom yells at me. But that's how we train our kids. In the mornings, we greet people and say, "Hi, how are you?" We say, "Hi, how are you?" Back, "How you doing?" God forbid someone ever tells you, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa." If you say, "How you doing?" and someone begins to, "I'm having such a rough day, I had a fight with my wife." No, stop. I don't really care. I was just being nice. I'm on my way to the train. I don't got time for that. I didn't really mean it. I was just being polite. So we train ourselves, however, to give these perfunctory responses because that's what makes you a kind, considerate person. When a person is involved in acts of kindness and acts of compassion, he becomes that kind of a person. Therefore, when a person is involved in the mitzvot, it affects your essence of who you are. All the philosophy in the world won't do that. That's why we have a shel yad and a shel rosh and a tefillin. Right? We act like a Jew and we think like a Jew. And you can't have one without the other. And the shel yad goes on first and comes off last. Because what you do matters most. Even more than what you think. Of course, the thought process is significant. But in terms of being the kind of person that you want to be, that you need to be actively involved in your ma'asim, in your actions. And mitov shelo lishma, ba lishma. Even if you're not doing it for the right reason, you will get there eventually. One of my friends told me when he was in Israel, he said to me, "I was such a fool in high school for putting on film." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was saying, why I was doing it." So I said, "You think that you were wrong for doing it then?" He said, "Yeah, what was the point?" I said, "You need to go back and learn it again." Of course, it's a richer experience when you understand more about it, but we need to understand that doing the mitzvot have inherent value. Some parts of which that we can understand right away, and some parts that we cannot. But there's inherent value in every single mitzvah that we do. And that's why we hope to have an active year of mitzvot. It means to be physically, actively engaged in the mitzvot and be affected in the way that we should by them. Elul has an acronym, several acronyms actually. Ani l'dodi v'dodi li, right? But one of them is in the parsha we read this morning. Et levavcha ve'et levav zarecha, right? Et levavcha ve'et levav. So, your heart and the heart of your children. And the beginning of that pasuk is Umal Hashem et levavcha ve'et levav zarecha. God will circumcise your heart and the heart of your son. What does it mean to circumcise someone's heart? Right? So, comes wrong with opening up someone's heart and cutting out a piece of the pericardium. To circumcise someone's heart is to create a sensitivity that used to be there, that many of us have lost. So, for example, many of us become, especially like in our kind of community, in modern Orthodox communities, we become very, very jaded. So, the modern Orthodox problem is that we lack the zealousness and the extremism, the fanaticism, so to speak, of the right wing, because we don't want to be like that, supposedly, as if there's something wrong with that. And we have heard about being Jewish year after year after year, and it kind of like just washes over us. We've heard it so many times that it doesn't really mean anything. We just go through the motions. It becomes very, very routine. We're not really affected by it. When you were a kid and you fell down, you scraped your knee or your elbow, and it began to ooze a little bit like pinkish, watery, not quite blood, etc., and it was so painful. And when the wind would blow, you would feel it cold. So when that piece of skin was gone, you were hypersensitive there, that fresh layer. And that's what circumcision is. Kadosh Baruch Hu will circumcise your heart means that it should make your heart able to feel again, because it's so difficult to feel. We're in such a callous society where we mock everything which is ruchani, which is spiritual, and we don't take it seriously. So we hear the same things and we're not affected by it. It's so difficult to be in a situation where you actually can open yourself up. And then even if you're ready to open yourself up, you're afraid of the ridicule of your neighbor. Because how will it look to the person that's next to me if I am into my davening, if I'll actually stop and bench, or if I begin to sing, God forbid, at a Shabbos table, or I actually want to hear a Dvar Torah, then maybe my friends won't think I'm cool, etc. It's a difficult thing to do that. But we need to actually be open to hearing words of Musar and the things that are able to affect us. But you have to be open to being affected. You know, when I used to fight for kids to go to yeshiva, high school, so Rabbi Jensen and I were always like, a couple of kids were always kind of, let's say, get left behind, whether their grades were poor or whatever was going on, they couldn't afford to go, we'd have to lobby for them. So one of the schools that was the most difficult, has the most difficult times, I think it still exists, and we both love this school very much. It's called Ezra. Ezra Academy is considered by many to be a weaker school. I love this school. I think they do a lot of tremendous things. Because the tuition is very low, they have very low budget, etc. But they take a lot of kids. Right now, it's very full of a lot of Bulgarian kids. They used to have a lot of kids from Great Neck also. And I was lobbying for this one kid with Rabbi Jensen, and Rabbi Zakatinsky said, "Listen, Rabbi," he goes, "honestly, I don't think there's anything we could do with this kid. We're like, he's a Jewish kid. He's in the Neshama. We want him to go to yeshiva." He was like, "I know, but he's toast already." I said, "What does that mean?" He said, "After you guys have gotten done with him and not succeeded, there's not much that we can do. He's already burnt." And it was such a crushing thing for us to hear, because here we are thinking that we're doing such a good job, and I'm sure with many people we did. He goes, "But when a kid comes out of your school and he doesn't really want to go to yeshiva, and you're trying to push him to go, and he's jaded, he's not open. When I take a kid out of public school, it's tabula rasa. We got a chance to start fresh. We can make a positive impression. But he's gone through the motions. He's heard all the things we're going to say to him. So if it didn't work, it's very hard to get started. And for a lot of us, we're like that. We're very, very jaded. We're not very impressed. And it's hard to be inspired. So Kadosh Baruch Hu says, if you're with me, Umal Hashem et levavcha bet levav zarecha, that I'll help you circumcise your heart and that of your children and make them sensitive. And you need to create those atmospheres for our families where they're able to be affected. We're able to be with people that will impact them, that will have an effect on them. They have to be open to having that happen. So, two more ideas and then we'll wrap up. First is that the Rav would describe many reasons for the shofar. The shofar is a call to battle against the Yetzer Hara. The shofar is a wake-up call, it's an alarm clock. The shofar reminds you of Akedat Yitzchak. The shofar, the Rav said, was a bechi olami, was a universal cry. All things that are under stress and duress will scream and cry if they can, when they're frightened. And on this day, Ashkenaz, Sfar, no matter what country you come from, we all call out to Kadosh Baruch Hu, at least in one part of the tefillah, the same. We use the shofar to call out to Kadosh Baruch Hu. And the crying is what it's supposed to be about. And the nature of Tkiyah, Shorim Torah, all different kinds of cries. Right? Some people cry in a long cry. Right? And then your mom cries in like a sighing. Like, and then little kids cry in a staccato cry. And teenage girls cry one then the other, right? And then they whip themselves into a frenzy and go into staccato. So they start off sighing, and then it gets worse and worse and worse and worse, like that. But the idea is that there's a cry in there. Language is an amazing gift. The Kuzari, written by Rabbi Levi, when he describes, he's talking about Judaism to the king, showing how it's the most sensible religion. He describes different forms of existence. He begins with the domain, inanimate life, rock. Then the tzomeach, vegetation, things that grow. And then chai, the animal kingdom. The medaber, the human, and the Yisrael. But the word for human was medaber. What makes us distinctly human was that we can speak. Although surely other forms of existence have methods of communication. Dolphins, dogs, animals all communicate, but not at the same level of specificity. It's one of the most glorious things about us that we can actually form words to express ourselves with such amazing specificity and different shades of meaning, and be so expressive and so rich. And yet, language fails sometimes. Sometimes words just don't do it. And when your kid is crying and they're in a panic, they're in the mall with you as you're shopping, and there's this big, huge, round thing of clothing that you're looking at, and you go from one to the next, and your kid can't see because he's only this tall. He can't see you anymore. He's in a panic. He's crying. He's screaming. And when you finally see him, he needs only one thing. There's nothing you can say that's going to calm him down. You need to pick him up and hug him. Because a physical embrace will communicate far more by way of security than anything you're going to say verbally will. There are times that words fail us. The physical relationship between the genders also. There are some things, in terms of expressing love, that can't be expressed physically. And that's why when the Torah refers to the physical relationship, Adam yada et chava ishto. Because lada'at, to know, because intimacy is supposed to be just that, an intimate level of knowledge. So there are times that language doesn't do enough. And the shofar, the Rav tells us, was meant to transcend language. When you're a kid and you're caught doing something wrong, which is like every day in camp, right? I'm doing my thing on one or two kids in the office. And as they're trying to work out whether they're going to admit what happened, they finally decide to come clean. They just burst out in tears in the middle of it. As they're telling you what happened, they just break down crying because they're so sorry, they feel so bad, they just don't know what to do with themselves, they just cry. That's supposed to be us. Monday and Tuesday morning this week, that's supposed to be us. That shofar is that cry that I really, really am so sorry for the things that I've done and for the things that I didn't do that I should have done. That you just break down. Rav Hirsch, Shimshon Hirsch tells us that tears are the sweat of the soul. In the same way as your body, when it exerts itself, you begin to sweat. When your soul is really working and you're really thinking about where you are in terms of your relationship with God, it will sweat through your eyes. And you will have those tears if you're doing something right. When someone asks you, why are you crying? Why are you not? How could you not? There's so many things that I regret from this year that I could have done, that I didn't do. So many students that I didn't reach that I could have. So many kids who would have benefited from a kind word or a compliment that I was just too busy to give. How could you not cry about that? How could you not cry about some of the things that you said that you can't unsay once you've said them? There are so many things that we may have done. We need to think about that going forward and really experience that form of regret. This is the time to let some of it go and to feel that. We're about to say Selihot in a while. And that saying sorry takes a while to get the rhythm of. Not so easy to say sorry to mean it. So there was a story that happened a few years ago. It must have been like 4 or 5 years ago. I was called up by Tova Ackerman, who worked in Hunkies. Okay, Hunkies is the place that a lot of you used to eat in high school, right? Hunkies and Wingwon, right? When we went to Hank. And I gave Hunkies the account for lunch for the camp. Richie's a friend of mine, does a good job, etc. More or less. Right? So he opened up a second store in Plainview. And in the week that it opened, his niece, Tova, and all of us food rats all know each other, because I grew up in the food business also, she said, calls me breathless. Steve, you have to hear the story. You're not going to believe it. It just happened today in the store. It's like unbelievable. I was like, calm down. What happened? I thought she was robbed. She said, this guy walks into our store. It's a grand opening in the Plainview store. He walks inside, and he's wearing it's like a Fromy outfit, like white button-down shirt, black pants, black jacket, beard, velvet yarmulke, hat. And he's just standing in the little store. So I was like, okay. So I had to ask him, can I get you anything? And he said, no, I'm fine. And he just stood right smack in the middle of the store. Like, not near the seats and not near the counter. So she stands there watching for a while, and he's there for 5, 8, 10 minutes. And now, he's a creeper. Right? It's awkward now. It's uncomfortable now. So she said, listen, sir, is there anything I can get you? Because people are starting to ask, what you're doing here, if you want to order something, that's great. If not, maybe there's someplace else you could do whatever it is that you're doing. He said, I need to speak to him. So he points toward the counter, and she says, the counter guy? She says, no. In the back, that guy back there. I'd like to speak to him. He's holding him up. So she says, you want to speak to Jose? He said, yeah, I want to speak to Jose. Jose doesn't get a lot of company in the store. So she's very curious now, so she calls Jose out. Jose puts down the mop, comes out front, and the two of them are standing together, and now she's very curious, so she's on the side, beyond eavesdropping. She's just watching. And she's like, hey, where's this going? So he says, Jose, do you remember me? He said, no, I don't, I'm sorry. He said, okay, have you ever worked in a pizza shop before? He said, sure, lots of pizza stores. He said, did you ever work in one in West Hempstead? And Jose looks down at the floor, and he said, yeah, I did. And he said, how come you left there? He said, I didn't leave, I was fired. So he said, well, how come you were fired? If you don't mind me asking. He said, well, there was money missing from the register. They said I took it, and I was fired. So he said, Jose, did you take the money? He said, no. Then why'd they fire you? He goes, they didn't believe me. So he said, Jose, I believe you. I took the money. A few years ago, I was a high school senior at Hank, and I used to work. when I had time, Richie would let me work behind the counter. He didn't have a beard then. He didn't dress like that then. And I took the money, and they discovered it was missing, and I panicked. And I knew that if I blamed you, you weren't Jewish, and I wouldn't get in trouble for it. So I let them fire you. So I was in yeshiva for the last few years, and I got with God and religion, and I was speaking to my rabbi about doing tshuva, repentance, and he said, "There's no hope for you. There's nothing you can do here in Israel." He said, "You can daven all day long. It's not going to help. You hurt somebody, you wrong them, and you have to go make it right." So when he came back to the States, he set out to look for this Jose, but he went to Honkies and he was fired. He didn't know he was. He said, "For 2 years, I have been looking at every pizza store on Long Island hoping to find you. And this one just opened up." So we tell the stories 50 times and the same thing. So meanwhile, he pulls out a big fat envelope full of cash. He says, "This is what I took. And tell me how many weeks of work you missed and how much money you lost until you find the next job." The three of them in Tova is like mascara running down her face. She can't believe it. And she's like dialing people that won't believe the story. She tells Adina calls up Pesach Kron. Pesach Kron is a mole, and he writes these books of inspirational stories. She says, "Rabbi Kron, you have to write this next story in your book." He gets these calls all the time. He blew off Adina, which is not a good thing to do. So she calls him back and says, "This is Rabbi Kron. This story is better than the story you had in your last book. It's going to go in your next book. Trust me, just listen to it." And of course, he did, and it appeared in his next book. And Tova, when she called me, said, "I grew up in yeshiva also. I went to Hal, and I went to Hafter High School, and I went to Israel for the year, and I always heard about doing tshuva, but I don't think until today I have ever actually seen someone do it. This is the first time in my life I think I've ever seen someone really do teshuvah. I've never witnessed it before in my life. This is the first and only time." And it was such a mind-boggling thing that someone could be so preoccupied with that. Some of that should be with us as we go into asking our Selihot. And as we're asking Hashem for forgiveness, that's not going to do the trick. We have to go back and apologize to the people that are around us who we affect the most. I apologize a lot to my staff, both individually and collectively, things I might have said or done to them. And it's a really, really important thing. And this next year, in terms of the opportunities that we have, don't wait so long to say you're sorry, because it gets harder the longer you wait. And think about the time that we have. Now we're going to make the most of every minute. And the minutes that we shouldn't steal from the people that we love, from our children, from our spouses. And then when we're spending that time with them, shut your phone off and be there with them and be involved. And if you're learning, then you should really learn with everything. Rav Werner used to ask us, Rav Werner in Yeshiva used to say to us, "What's the most important thing you should be doing?" He always asked us questions that he knew we were going to get wrong. So, what's the most important thing in your life at that moment? And someone said, "Doing mitzvot." No. Davening with kavanah. No. Doing acts of chesed. No. And he said, whatever you're doing at that moment should be the most important thing in your life. If you're playing ball, play to win. Play with every ounce of strength that you have. And if you're learning Torah, then be there and sit there and focus every bit of your mental and emotional faculties on that. And if you're with your family, then be with them and forget everything else. And give them your undivided attention. Hopefully that year that we're going to be looking forward to having will be full of mitzvot, of those kinds of mitzvot, but we're really present in the moment, making every minute count. Shana Tova to all of you.